Hey, I'm Mary Jane from the province of Udine, which is where I am shooting this video right now. I am 100% Italian, I grew up here, but then I was stuck for the whole pandemic 1.5 years in the United States, and now I just came back to my home country, and I want to give you my first impressions coming back to my culture of origin. Let's see a few of my very first impressions just by taking my Alitalia flight from New York City JFK airport to Venice. First thing I noticed is that the portions of the meals on the airplane were very small. When the plane arrived, I couldn't believe that that was really our meal, and I don't know if it was just a standard regular meal, but I figured that maybe by staying in the United States so long, I got used so much to the bigger portions that they have that probably the Italian standard one looked very small to me. But I can confirm you that Italian portions are way smaller than the American ones. Second thing that I noticed was still on the plane, and it was the breakfast. In the morning of my flight, the staff came to distribute these pieces of cake and that was the breakfast. To my new American perception, that looked incredibly awkward. A breakfast should be a little bit more substantial than that, and also the fact that the cake is something sweet and it's more something that you would eat for dessert in my American perception, but then I realized that I've always eaten cake for breakfast. In Italy, eating sweets for breakfast is not only normal, but it's the rule. Nobody eats something salty for breakfast unless they are the exception, of course. And I've always found that normal, although when I'm abroad, I enjoy a salty breakfast. But this time I found it so weird that a piece of cake was served as breakfast. It was still delicious though. Third element I noticed when I landed to Rome Fiumicino airport, and it was the general chaos. I just needed to take a connection flight to Venice in Rome, so I was there for very short amount of time, but the situation in the airport with the staff was so chaotic and confusing, and I would say also lively, because in the end we were all directed in the right place, you know, but the way that they directed us was extremely chaotic, again, to my American eyes. And at that moment I thought, wow, I really came back to Italy. Fourth element is connected with this one, and it's the vitality. Not only in this situation, but also when I then landed to Venice and I went to spend a nice day in Venice just strolling around, everything seems so much more lively in a human way. It's something a bit complicated to explain, I guess. I saw people being more communicative. People were chatting on the streets, sitting at the bars, drinking a thing while having a conversation with other people and stuff like that. I don't know how to explain this precisely, but I just took a note on my phone that I felt like there was this great energy. At the same time, connected to this one was the fact that everyone was chilling. And this is an element that I talked several times before in my comparisons between United States and Italy, or Europe in general, really. People are very, very chill. They are so much more relaxed than I see them in New York City, and I would say in the United States in general. Of course, the United States that I've experienced, which is not the entire country. The fact that people are just existing and doing things that they find pleasant, like taking a stroll around the city, having a drink with their friends, or just sitting on the couch doing crosswords. These are all things that I hadn't seen in so long, and it's just also so relaxing for me to find myself in an environment where people around me are so chill. I think that the energy that you get from the people around you also influences your state of mind. Let's go back to the airport situation now, and Another thing I noticed immediately is that not in the entire airport there was AC. So there were areas of the airport where air conditioning was clearly not functioning or simply not present. I noticed that because in the United States you would never find anything like that. Not having air conditioning is simply unacceptable in the United States. They have it everywhere. In Italy, we have air conditioning, but it's not everywhere, and you can live fine just without it. When I arrived to the airport in Italy, I realized immediately, or I remembered immediately, a problem that we Italians have. The fact that we cut lines. We are absolutely unable to form a line. I know it's something that kids are taught in school, and it should be something very simple and easy to do, but somehow we Italian adults are not able to stand in line, one behind the other. So if you visit Italy, be aware of this problem that Italians have. If you are at the bar, for example, and you are standing in a line waiting for your turn to order your coffee, you should probably not do that, but adjust to the general crowd who is going to just push themselves toward the bar and trying to capture the attention of the barista before the others. I apologize about that on behalf of all Italians. There was another scene at the airport of Fiumicino that really made me smile and made me feel immediately like I was back to Italy. The airport was obviously desert, but then you would see sudden crowds around the coffee shop, around the cafeteria, little crowds of people standing on the standing tables and having their espresso. You probably know that in Italy we very often have our coffee while standing at the bar or at the standing table. We don't really sit down because our coffee is very, 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 very small. Of course, after a long flight, what do? You go to the toilet. And this is a very trivial element, but it's something that we do every day, multiple times per day. When you flush the toilet, it's so different in Italy than in the United States. In the US, the water is already in the toilet, and when you flush it, it gets sucked up. Whereas in Italy, there is no water, gets released into the toilet bowl, and it's like a mini waterfall of water. I'm sorry, it's one of those things that you see and you are like, I'm back to Italy. Another thing that made me feel very relieved of being back to Italy was writing the date. For 1.5 years, I had to force myself every time I was asked to write the date in forms and stuff like that, to write the dates in the correct American way, which is with the month first and then the day and then the year, which doesn't make any sense to me. In Italy, we write day first, then month, and then year. It's like in an ascending way. I never got used to this method in the United States, so I was very relieved to fill out forms at the airport with the normal, for me, way to write the date. Another social habit that I noticed for the very first time when I arrived to Italy after 1.5 years of being abroad was the fact that men were checking out women all the time. This is something I never noticed. I heard foreigners talking about it before, but I never realized that Italians were doing it. I just never noticed it. This time I felt immediately, even at the airport, eyes on me, eyes that I didn't know. And it felt very strange. And then I kept noticing, while women were just walking around, men were looking at them just for a few seconds, but it's something subtle, but it's there. New York City is a coastal city. You know that it's by the ocean, so I had the ocean around me all the time. This time, coming back to Italy through Rome and Venice, I had the Mediterranean Sea right next to the airport both times, and they are so different. They are both salty water, but they are so different. Even just looking at the surface of the water, the ocean has this big, very long lines of waves. The blue of the water is usually deeper, of a darker color, and then you see these white lines of the foam that the waves form. In the Mediterranean, you don't see that. Usually, I say usually, around the coast, the water is of a brighter blue color, and the waves are very small. You don't always have these foamy waves, but most of the times you have just the water doing like this. So it's just really the surface of the water moving rather than actual waves. And again, I felt like I was finally back home. And the very first impression that I've had, in this note on my phone, I have a very long list of things that I wrote down about things that I noticed in Italy coming back from living abroad that I never noticed before. So I will for sure make more videos about this topic in the future. I will also make a video about reverse cultural shock for sure, because there's a lot to say. The last very little thing for this video is the way of dressing. When I landed into Italy, I immediately realized that people do pay attention to the clothes that they wear. Maybe there is this stereotype internationally that Italians are always fancy dressed, which is not true, just because we have fancy clothing brands in our country. That's really not the case. But one thing we must admit, we do find a certain pleasure in being well dressed. In the United States, this concept is just not there at all. An average 40-year-old American could go to the shops with a random t-shirt, jeans, and a pair of sneakers. It's not really the case in Italy. You find people like that, but there is a word in Italian that I don't know how to translate in English, and it's sciatto. So I find Americans, sorry, this doesn't want to be an offense, but it's just, the perspective of a different culture. I find Americans to be very shatty when it comes to the way of dressing, which doesn't mean that there are Americans that wear amazing clothes, have an amazing style, but I'm just talking averagely. If you just take a walk around a random city in the United States, you will not see as many people that put a certain attention in the way they pick up the clothes in the morning. Whereas in Italy, we also have a certain standard way of thinking that is very spontaneous to us to pair a bottom and a pants in a harmonious way and pick some good colors of our clothes to put together, pay attention to the shapes that we put on top of our bodies and things like that. It's just a little bit of attention that Americans culturally don't have. That's all. Again, I'm Mary Jane. This is my channel, What a Shame Mary Jane. I live between New York City and the region of Friuli-Venezia Giulia, but I also like to travel a lot around the world. If you're Italian and you would like to improve your English, I created an online English pronunciation course specifically for Italians. I created this course because in school nobody teaches us English pronunciation, and I believe that pronunciation is a fundamental part of a language. You find the link down below in the description. I will see you in my next video.